All right, so that was some personal stuff, I guess you could say, just some personal stuff that happened. So, yeah, I'm not going to go into detail about that. So, we're going to go ahead and continue where we left off and apologize to the audience there for, um, leaving and kind of, this and that. But if nothing else, you can enjoy the VOD later. And that's perfectly all right. That is perfectly all right. I'm going to go ahead and, continue on where I was here. Okay. The bourgeoisie keeps more and more doing away with the scattered state of the population, of the means of production, and of property. It is agglomerated population, centralized means of production, and is concentrated property in a few hands. The necessary consequence of this was political centralization. Independent, or but loosely connected provinces with separate interests, laws, governments, and systems of taxation became lumped together in one nation with one government, one code of laws, one national class interest, one frontier, and one customs tariff. The bourgeoisie, during its rule of scarce 100 years, has created more massive and more colossal productive forces than have all preceding generations together. Subjection of nature's forces to man, machinery, application of chemistry to industry and agriculture, steam navigation, railways, electric telegraphs, clearing of whole continents for cultivation, canalization of rivers, whole populations conjured out of the ground. What earlier had even a presentiment that such productive forces slumbered in the lap of social labor. We see then the means of production and of exchange on whose foundation the bourgeoisie built itself up were generated in feudal society. At a certain stage in the development of these means of production and of exchange, the conditions under which feudal society produced and exchanged the feudal organization of agriculture and manufacturing industry, in one word, the feudal relations of property became no longer compatible with the already developed productive forces. They became so many fetters. They had to be burst asunder. They were burst asunder. Into their place stepped free competition, accompanied by a social and political constitution adapted to it, and by the economical and political sway of the bourgeoisie class, or the bourgeois class, Mon Dieu. A similar movement is going on before our own eyes. Modern bourgeois society, with its relations of production, of exchange, and of property, a society that has conjured up such gigantic means of production and of exchange, is like the sorcerer who is no longer able to control the powers of the nether world, whom he has called up by his spells. For many a decade, past the history of industry and commerce is but the story of the revolt of modern productive forces against the modern conditions of production, against the property relations that are the condition for the existence of the bourgeoisie and of its rule. It is enough to mention the commercial crises that by their periodical return put on its trial, each time more threateningly, the existence of the entire bourgeois society. In these crises, a great part, not only of the existing products, but also of the previously created productive forces are periodically destroyed. In these crises, these break out an epidemic that, in all early epochs, would have seemed an absurdity, the epidemic of overproduction. Society suddenly finds itself put back into a state of momentary barbarism. It appears as if a famine, a universal war of devastation, had cut off the supply of every means of subsistence. Industry and commerce seem to be destroyed. And why? Because there is too much civilization, too much means of subsistence, too much industry, too much commerce. The productive forces at the disposal of society no longer tend to further the development of the conditions of bourgeois property. On the contrary, they have become too powerful for these conditions by which they are fettered. And so soon, let me see here, sorry, just double checking some stuff here. Just want to make sure this actually shows up as, sorry. Just want to make sure that this actually shows up. Yep, okay. Good deal. I just want to make sure that's actually showing up. Like I say, it was just personal stuff that occurred. I don't really, want to get into it. It's just family business, so I don't want to go into detail there. But you know what? Regardless, the show must go on, so I will continue on to record this. Hopefully, y'all will enjoy this a little bit later. But I've read a couple paragraphs of this one person that's come in, so apologies. You can rewind this when the VOD is up. But yeah, we're on page 20 now. And we're going to continue forward here. The productive forces at the disposal of society no longer tend to further the development of the conditions of bourgeois property. On the contrary, they have become too powerful for these conditions by which they are fettered, and so soon as they overcome these fetters, they bring disorder into the whole of bourgeois society. Endanger the existence of the bourgeois property. The conditions of bourgeois society are too narrow to comprise the wealth created by them. And how does the bourgeoisie get over these crises? On the one hand, by enforced destruction of a mass of productive forces, on the other by the conquest of new markets, and by the more thorough exploitation of the old ones. That is to say, by paving the way for more extensive and more destructive crises, and by diminishing the means whereby crises are prevented. The weapons with which the bourgeoisie felled feudalism to the ground are now turned against the bourgeoisie itself. But not only has the bourgeoisie forged the weapons that bring death to itself, it has also caused into existence the men who are to wield those weapons, the modern working class, the proletarians. In proportion as the bourgeoisie, i.e. capital, is derived, in the same proportion is the proletariat, the modern working class, develop a class of laborers who live only so long as they find work, and who find work only so long as their labor increases capital. These laborers who must sell themselves piecemeal are a commodity, like every other article of commerce, and are consequently exposed to all of the vicissitudes of competition, to all the fluctuations of the market. Owing to the extensive use of machinery and to the division of labor, the work of the proletarians has lost all individual character and consequently all charm for the workman. He becomes an appendage of the machine. And it is only the most simple, most monotonous, and most easily acquired knack that is required of him. Hence, the cost of a production of a workman is restricted almost entirely to the means of subsistence that he requires for his maintenance and for the propagation of his race. Ooh boy. But the price of a commodity, and therefore also of labor, is equal to its cost of production. In proportion, therefore, as the repulsiveness of the work increases, the wage decreases. Nay, more, in production, as the use of machinery and division of labor increases, in the same proportion, the burden of toil also increases, whether by prolongation of the working hours, by increase of the work exacted in a given time, or by increased speed of the machinery, etc. Modern industry has converted the little workshop of the patriarchal master into the great factory of the industrial capitalist. Masses of laborers crowded into the factory are organized like soldiers. As privates of the industrial army, they are placed under the command of a perfect hierarchy of officers and sergeants. Not only are they slaves of the bourgeois class and of the bourgeois state, they are daily and hourly enslaved by the machine, by the overlooker, and above all, by the individual bourgeois manufacturer himself. The more openly this despotism proclaims gain to be its end and aim, the more petty, the more hateful, and the more embittering it is. The less the skill and exertion of strength implied in manual labor, in other words, The more modern industry becomes developed, the more labor of men superseded by that of women. Differences of age and sex have no longer any distinctive social validity for the working class. All are instruments of labor, more or less expensive to use according to their age and sex. No sooner is the exploitation of the laborer by the manufacturer so far at an end that he receives his wages in cash, than he is set upon by other portions of the bourgeoisie, the landlord, the shopkeeper, the pawnbroker, etc. The lower strata of the middle class, the small tradespeople, shopkeepers, and retired tradesmen, generally the handicraftsmen and peasants. All these sink gradually into the proletariat, partly because their diminutive capital does not suffice for the scale on which modern industry is carried on, and is swapped in the competition with the large capitalists, partly because their specialized skill is rendered worthless by the new methods of production. Thus, the proletariat is recruited from all classes of the population. This kind of goes into the reserve army of labor. I don't think the Communist Manifesto mentions this, but I believe that's what they are hinting at. The proletariat goes through various stages of development. With its birth begins its struggle with the bourgeoisie. At first, the contest is carried on by individual laborers, then by the work people of a factory, then by the operatives of one trade in one locality against the individual bourgeois who directly exploits them. They direct their attacks not against the bourgeois conditions of production, but against the instruments of production themselves. They destroy imported wares that compete with their labor. They smash the pieces of machinery they set factories ablaze. They seek to restore by force the vanished status of the workmen of the Middle Ages. At this stage, laborers still form an incoherent mass, scattered over the whole country and broken up by their mutual competition. If anywhere they unite to form more compact bodies, this is not yet the consequence of their own active union, but of the union of the bourgeoisie, which class, in order to attain its own political ends, is compelled to set the whole proletariat in motion, and is moreover yet, for a time, able to do so. At this stage, therefore, the proletarians do not fight their enemies, but the enemies of their enemies. The remnants of absolute monarchy, the landowners, the non-industrial bourgeois, the petty bourgeoisie. Thus, the whole historical movement is concentrated in the hands of the bourgeoisie. Every victory so obtained is a victory for the bourgeoisie. But with the development of industry, the proletariat not only increases in number, it becomes concentrated in greater masses, its strength grows, and it feels like that strength more. The various interests and conditions of life within the ranks of the proletariat are more and more equalized, in proportion as machinery obliterates all distinctions of labor, and nearly everywhere reduces the wages to the same low level. The growing competition among the bourgeois and the resulting commercial crises make the wages of the workers even more fluctuating. The unceasing improvement of the machinery, ever more rapidly developing, makes their livelihood more and more precarious. The collisions between individual workmen and the individual bourgeois take more and more of the character of collisions between the two classes. How's it going, Temujin? Sorry about all that. Like I say, it was just some personal stuff that occurred just now. So I just, I was just like, okay, I don't know how long this is going to be. So I started back up. So, but thank you for sticking around, Temujin. I do appreciate that. Thereupon, the workers begin to form combinations, trade unions, against the bourgeois. They club together in order to keep up the rate of wages. They found permanent associations in order to make provision beforehand for these occasional revolts. Here and there, the contest breaks out into riots. Now and then, the workers are victorious, but only for a time. The real fruit of their battle lies not in the immediate result, but in the ever-expanding union of the workers. This union is helped on by the improved means of communication that are created by modern industry and that place the workers of different localities in contact with one another. It was just this contact that was needed to centralize the numerous local struggles, all the same character, into one national struggle between classes. But every class struggle is a political struggle, and that union to attain which the burghers of the Middle Ages, with their miserable highways, required centuries, the modern proletarians, thanks to the railways, achieve in a few years. This organization of the proletarians into a class and consequently into a political party is continually being upset again by the competition between the workers themselves. But it ever rises again, stronger and firmer and mightier. It compels legislative recognition of the particular interests of the workers by taking advantage of the divisions among the bourgeoisie itself. Thus, the 10 Hours Bill in England was carried. Altogether, collisions between the classes of the old society further, in many ways, the course of the development of the proletariat. The bourgeois finds itself involved in a constant battle, at first with the aristocracy, later on with those portions of the bourgeoisie itself, whose interests have become antagonistic to the progress of industry, at all times, with the bourgeoisie of foreign countries. In all these battles, it sees itself compelled to appeal to the proletariat, to ask for its help, and thus to drag it into the political arena. The bourgeoisie itself therefore supplies the proletariat with its own elements of political and general education. In other words, it furnishes the proletariat with weapons for fighting the bourgeoisie. Further, as we have already seen, entire sections of the ruling class are, by the advance of industry, precipitated in the proletariat, or at least threatened in their conditions of existence. They also supply the proletariat with fresh elements of enlightenment and progress. Finally, in times when the class struggle nears a decisive hour, the process of dissolution going on within the ruling class, in fact, within the whole range of society, assumes such a violent, glaring character that a small section of the ruling class cuts itself adrift and joins the revolutionary class, the class that holds the future in its hands, just as, therefore, at an earlier period, a section of the nobility went over to the bourgeoisie. So now a portion of the bourgeoisie goes over to the proletariat, and in particular, a portion of the bourgeois ideologists, who have raised themselves to the level of comprehending, theoretically, the historical movements as a whole. Of the classes that stand face to face with the bourgeoisie today, the proletariat alone is a really revolutionary class. The other classes decay and finally disappear in the face of modern industry. The proletariat is its special and essential product. The lower middle class, the small manufacturer, the shopkeeper, the artisan, the peasant, all of these fight against the bourgeoisie to save from extinction their existence as fractions of the middle class. They are therefore not revolutionary but conservative. Nay more, they are reactionary, for if they try to roll back the wheel of history, if by chance they are revolutionary, they are so only in the view of their impeding transfer into the proletariat. They thus defend not their present but their future interests. They desert their own standpoint to place themselves at that of the proletariat. The dangerous class, the social scum, that passively rotting mass, thrown off by the lowest layers of society, may here and there be swept into the movement by a proletarian revolution. He's talking about the lumpen proletariat, I believe. By a proletarian revolution. Its conditions of life, however, prepare it far more for the part of a bribed tool of a reactionary intrigue. In the conditions of the proletariat, these of old society at large are already virtually swamped. The proletarian is without property. His relation to his wife and children has no longer anything in common with the bourgeois family relations. Modern industrial labor, modern subjection to capital, the same in England as in France, in America as in Germany, has stripped him of every trace of national character. Law, morality, religion are to him so many bourgeois prejudices, behind which lurk in ambush just as many bourgeois interests. All the preceding classes that got the upper hand sought to fortify their already acquired status by subjecting society at large to their conditions of appropriation. The proletarians cannot become masters of the productive appropriation. The proletarians cannot become the master productive forces of society except by abolishing their own previous mode of appropriation, and thereby also every other previous mode of appropriation. They have nothing of their own to secure, and to fortify their mission is to destroy all the previous securities for and insurances of individual property. All previous historical movements were movements of minorities or in the interests of minorities. The proletarian movement is the self-conscious, independent movement of the immense majority. In the interest of the immense majority, the proletariat, the lowest stratum of our present society, cannot stir. Oh man, sorry. Oh man, the yawning. Sorry. The proletariat, the lowest stratum of our present society, cannot raise itself up without the whole superincumbent strata of the official society being sprung into the air. Though not in substance, yet in form, the struggle of the proletariat with the bourgeoisie is at first a national struggle. The proletariat of each country must, of course, first of all, settle matters with its own bourgeoisie. In depicting the most general phases of the development of the proletariat, we traced the more or less veiled civil war raging within existing society up to the point where that war breaks out into open revolution, and where the violent overthrow of the bourgeoisie lays the foundation for the sway of the proletariat. Hitherto, every form of society has been based, as we have already seen, on the antagonism of oppressing and oppressed classes. But in order to oppress a class, certain conditions must be assured to it, under which it can at least continue its slavish existence. The serf in the period of the serfdom raised itself to membership in the commune, just as the petty bourgeois, under the yoke of feudal absolutism, managed to develop into a bourgeois. The modern laborer, on the contrary, instead of rising with the progress of industry, sinks deeper and deeper below the conditions of the existence of his own class. He becomes a pauper, and pauperism develops more rapidly than population and wealth. And here it becomes evident that the bourgeoisie is unfit any longer to be the ruling class in society, and to impose its conditions on the existence upon society as an overriding law. It is unfit to rule because it is incompetent. It is incompetent to assure an existence to its slave within his slavery, because it cannot help letting him sink into such a state that it has to feed him, instead of being fed by him. Society can no longer live. The bourgeoisie can no longer live under this bourgeoisie. In other words, its existence is no longer compatible with society. The essential condition for the existence for the sway of the bourgeois class is the formation and augmentation of capital. The condition for its wage labor rests exclusively on the competition between the laborers. The advance of industry, whose involuntary promoter is a bourgeoisie, replaces the isolation of laborers, due to competition by the revolutionary combination, due to association. The development of modern industry, therefore, cuts from under its feet the very foundation on which the bourgeoisie produces and appropriates products. What the bourgeoisie, therefore, produces above all is its own gravediggers. Its fall and the victory of the proletariat is equally inevitable. Part 2. Proletarians and Communists. In what relation do the Communists stand to the proletariat as a whole? The Communists do not form a separate party opposed to the working class parties. They have no interest separate and apart from the proletariat as a whole. They do not set up any sectarian principles of their own, by which to shape and mold the proletarian movement. The Communists are distinguished from other working class parties by this only: 1. The national struggles of the proletarians of the different countries. They point out and bring to the front the common interests of the entire proletariat, independently of all nationality. 2. In the various stages of development, which the struggle of the working class against the bourgeoisie has to pass through, they always and everywhere represent the interests of the movement as a whole. Communists, therefore, are on the one hand practically the most advanced and resolute section of the working class parties of every country. That section which pushes forward all others, on the other hand, theoretically, they have over the great mass of the proletariat the advantage of clearly understanding the line of march, the conditions, and the ultimate general result of the proletarian movement. The immediate aim of the communists is the same as that of all other proletarian parties: formation of the proletariat into a class, overthrow of the bourgeois supremacy, conquest of political power by the proletariat. The theoretical conclusions of the communists are in no way based on ideas or principles that have been invented or discovered by this or that would-be universal reformer. They merely exist in general terms, actual relations springing from an existing class struggle, from a historic movement going on under our very eyes. Hello, 99. Hello, how are you? Springing from an existing class struggle from a historical movement going on under our very eyes. The abolition of existing property relations is not at all a distinctive feature of communism. All property relations in the past have continually been subject to historical change consequent upon the change in historical conditions. The French Revolution, for example, abolished feudal property in favor of bourgeois property. The distinguishing feature of communism is not the abolition of property generally, but the abolition of bourgeois property. But the modern bourgeois private property is the final and most complete expression of the system of producing and appropriating products that is based on the class antagonisms. On the exploitation of the many by the few. In this sense, the theory of the communists may be summed up in the single sentence: abolition of private property. How are you doing again, Christian Dissident? I appreciate you stopping by. In this sense, the theory of the communists may be summed up, abolition of private property. We communists have been reproached with the desire of abolishing the right of personally acquiring property as the fruit of a man's own labor, which property is alleged to be the groundwork of all personal freedom, activity, and independence. No more monarchy. We can't have, communist aristocracy. Yeah, exactly. Monarchy is a communist constitution that turned away. They turned to aristocracy. Yeah, like I said, mistakes have happened. Let's continue forward here. Hard-won, self-acquired, self-earned property. Do you mean the property of a petty artisan and of the small peasant? A form of property that preceded the bourgeois form? There is no need to abolish that. The development of industry has to a great extent already destroyed it, and is still destroying it daily. Or do you mean the modern bourgeois private property? But does wage labor create any property for the laborer? Not a bit. It creates capital, i.e., the kind of property which exploits wage labor and which cannot increase except upon condition of begetting a new supply of wage labor for fresh exploitation. Property in its present form is based on the antagonism of capital and wage labor. Let us examine both sides of this antagonism. To be a capitalist is to have not only a purely personal, but a social status in production. Capital is a collective product, and only by the united action of many members, nay, in the last resort, only by the united action of all members of society can it be set in motion. Capital is, therefore, not a personal, it is a social power. When, therefore, capital is converted into common property, into the property of all members of society, personal property is not thereby transformed into social property. It is only the social character of the property that is changed. It loses its class character. Let us now take wage labor. The average price of wage labor is the minimum wage, i.e., the quantum of the means of subsistence, which is absolutely requisite to keep the laborer in bare existence as a laborer. What, therefore, the wage laborer appropriates by means of his labor merely suffices to prolong and reproduce a bare existence. We by no means intend to abolish his personal appropriation of the products of labor. an appropriation that is made for the maintenance and reproduction of human life, and that leaves no surplus wherewith to command the labor of others. All that we want to do away with is the miserable character of this appropriation under which the laborer lives merely to increase capital, and is allowed to live only in so far as the interest of the ruling class requires it. In bourgeois society, living labor is but a means to increase accumulated labor. In communist society, accumulated labor is but a means to widen, to enrich, to promote the existence of the laborer. In bourgeois society, living labor is but a means to increase accumulated labor. In bourgeois society, therefore, the past dominates the present. In communist society, the present dominates the past. In bourgeois society, capital is independent and has individuality. Oh, excuse me. Fiscal taxes, so yeah. Subsist as a slave to pay your tax. Yeah, exactly. It's true. And the abolition of this state of things is called bourgeois. Abolition of individuality and freedom, and rightly so. The abolition of bourgeois individuality, bourgeois independence, and bourgeois freedom is undoubtedly aimed at. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, individualism and this notion of freedom is nonsense today. But yeah, by freedom is meant, under the present bourgeois conditions of production, free trade, free selling, and buying. But if selling and buying disappears, free selling and buying disappears also. This talk about free selling and buying and all the other brave words of our bourgeoisie about freedom in general have a meaning, if any, only in contrast with restricted selling and buying. With the fetid traders of the Middle Ages, but have no meaning when opposed to the communistic abolition of buying and selling, of the bourgeois conditions of production, and of the bourgeoisie itself. You are horrified at our intending to do away with private property, but in your existing society, private property is already done away with for 9/10 of the population. Its existence for the few is solely due to the non-existence in the hands of the 9/10. You reproach us, therefore, with intending to do away with a form of property, the necessary condition for whose existence is the non-existence of any property for the immense majority of society. In one word, you reproach us with the doing away with your property. Precisely so. That is just what we intend. From the moment when labor can no longer be converted into capital, money, or rent, into a social power capable of being monopolized, i.e., from the moment when individual property can no longer be transformed into bourgeois property. When individual property can no longer be transferred into bourgeois property, into capital, from that moment, you say individuality vanishes. You must, therefore, confess that by individual you mean no other person than the bourgeois, than the middle-class owner of property. This must, indeed, be swept out of the way and made impossible. Excuse me. Oh, boy. Communism deprives no man of the power to appropriate the products of society, and all that it does is to deprive him of the power to subjugate the labor of others by means of such appropriation. It has been objected that upon the abolition of private property, all work will cease, and a universal laziness will overtake us. According to this, bourgeois society ought long ago to have gone to the dogs through sheer idleness. For its members who work acquire nothing, and those who acquire anything do not work. The whole of this objection is but another expression of the tautology that there can no longer be any wage labor when there is no longer any capital. All objections urged at the communistic mode of producing and appropriating material products have, in the same way, been urged against the communistic models of producing and appropriating intellectual products. Just as to the bourgeois, the disappearance of class property is a disappearance of production itself, so the disappearance of class culture is to him identical with the disappearance of all culture. That culture, the loss which he laments, is the enormous majority a mere training to act as a machine. But don't wrangle with us so long as you apply to our intended abolition of bourgeois property. The standard of your bourgeois notions of freedom, culture, law, and etc. Your very ideas are but the outgrowth of the conditions of your bourgeois production and bourgeois property, just as your jurisprudence is but the will of your class made into a law for all, a will whose essential character and direction are determined by the economical conditions of existence of your class. The selfish misconception that induces you to transform into internal laws of nature and of reason the social norms springing from your present mode of production and form of property. Historical relations, yeah. A society usually made by people who wish to belong to it. Yeah. Like I say, this is just a reading of it. I don't agree with every single aspect of this. Oh boy, here we go. We're skipping through a little bit of this here, but basically, abolition of the family. Even the most radical flare-up at this infamous proposal of the communists. On what foundation is the present family, the bourgeois family, based? On capital, on private gain? In its completely developed form, this family exists only among the bourgeoisie. Oh, excuse me. If I have the convenience of electricity and tractors to produce excess for even the poor, I can pay you with the desolation of the earth, be placated, and you just pay me for it. Yeah, there is that. Yeah. The bourgeois family will vanish, as a matter of course, when its complement vanishes, and both will vanish with the vanishing of capital. Do you charge us with wanting to stop the exploitation of children by their parents? To this crime we plead guilty. But, you will say, we destroy the most hallowed of relations when we replace home education by social. Oh my goodness, sorry. I don't mean to be on him this much, I'm sorry, but yeah. I just didn't sleep that well, but that's my excuse. Let's see here. And your education? It is not that also social and determined by the social conditions which you educate by intervention, direct or indirect, of society by means of schools? The communists have not invented the intervention of society in education. They do but seek to alter the character of that intervention and to rescue education from the influence of the ruling class. The bourgeois claptrap about the family and education about the hallowed correlation of a parent and child becomes all the more disgusting, the more by the action of modern industry all family ties among the proletarians are torn asunder, and their children transformed into simple articles of commerce and instruments of labor. But you communists would introduce community of women, screams the whole bourgeoisie in chorus. The bourgeois sees in his wife a mere instrument of production. He hears that the instruments of production are to be exploited in common, and naturally can come to no other conclusion than the lot of being common to all will likewise fall to the women. He has not even a suspicion that the real point aimed at is to do away with the status of women as mere instruments of production. I hit that bell anyways. I appreciate that. Gordon Fiala. Let's see what we got here. For the rest, nothing is more ridiculous than the virtuous indignation of our bourgeois at the community of women, which they pretend is to be openly and officially established by the communists. The communists have no need to introduce community of women. It has existed almost from the time immemorial. Our bourgeois, not content with having the wives and daughters of their proletarians at their disposal. Oh boy. It keeps on hitting me. Okay. And we're on page 32, so we're getting there. We're almost done. What is it, about 16 pages, I think? Okay. Not to speak of common prostitutes, take the greatest pleasure in seducing each other's wives. What? Hold on. Let me read that again. Okay. Our bourgeois, not content content with having the wives and daughters of their proletarians at their disposal, not to speak of common prostitutes, take the greatest pleasure in seducing each other's wives. Oh, okay, sorry. I just misread that there. Sorry. Bourgeois marriage is in reality a system of wives in common, and thus, at the most, what the communists might possibly be reproached with is that they desire to introduce in substitution for a hypocritically concealed and openly legalized community of women. For the rest, it is self-evident that the abolition of the present system of production must bring with it the abolition of the community of women springing from that system, i.e., of prostitution, both public and private. Based. Get rid of prostitution. I agree. Get rid of that. Call me a swerve, call me whatever. No, get rid of prostitution. It serves no purpose to society. It simply, creates a control for women. If you want to call me a feminist for that, you can. But yeah, it's kind of cringe. Anywho, bourgeois marriage is in reality a system of. Okay, sorry, I read that. The communists are further reproached with desiring to abolish countries and nationality. The working men have no country. We cannot take from them what they have not got. Since the proletariat must first of all acquire political supremacy, must rise to the leading class of the nation, must constitute itself the nation. It is, so far, itself national, though not in the bourgeois sense of the word. National differences and antagonisms between peoples are daily more and more vanishing, owing to the development of the bourgeoisie to freedom of commerce, to the world market, to uniformity in the mode of production, and in the conditions of life corresponding thereto. Exactly, yes, sex work, yeah. The supremacy of the proletariat will cause them to vanish still faster. United action of the leading civilized countries, at least, is one of the first conditions for the emancipation of the proletariat. In proportion as the exploitation of one individual by another is put an end to, the exploitation of one nation by another will also be put an end to. In proportion as the antagonisms between classes within the nation vanishes. Oh, man. The hostility of one nation to another will come to an end. The charges against communism made from a religious, philosophical, and generally from an ideological standpoint are not deserving of serious examination. Does it require deep intuition to comprehend that man's ideas, views, and conceptions, in one word, man's consciousness, changes with every change in the conditions of his material existence, in his social relations, and in his social life? What else does the history of ideas prove than that intellectual production changes its character in proportion as material production is changed? The ruling idea of each age have ever been the ideas of its ruling class. When the people speak of ideas that revolutionize society, they do but express the fact that within the old society the elements of a new one have been created, and that the dissolution of the old ideas keeps even pace with the dissolution of the old conditions of existence. When the ancient world was in its last throes, the ancient religions were overcome by Christianity. When Christians' ideas succumbed in the 18th century to rationalist ideas, feudal society fought its death battle with the then revolutionary bourgeoisie. The idea of religious liberty and freedom of conscience merely gave expression to the sway of free competition within the domain of knowledge. Undoubtedly, it will be said, religious, moral, philosophical, and juridical ideas have been modified in the course of his historical development. But religion, morality, philosophy, political science, and law constantly survive this change. There are, besides, eternal truths such as freedom, justice, etc., that are common to all states of society. But communism abolishes eternal truths. It abolishes all religion and all morality, instead of constituting them on a new basis. It therefore acts in contradiction to all past historical experience. What does this accusation reduce itself to? The history of all past society has consisted in the development of class antagonisms, antagonisms that assumed different forms at different epochs. But whatever form they have taken, one fact is common to all past ages: the exploitation of one part of society by the other. No wonder then that the social consciousness of past ages, despite all the multiplicity and variety it displays, moves within certain common forms or general ideas. Despite all the multiplicity and variety it displays, the Communist Revolution is the most radical rupture with traditional property relations. No wonder that its development involves the most radical rupture with traditional ideas. But let us have done with the bourgeois objections to communism. We have seen above that the first step in the revolution by the working class is to raise the proletariat to the position of ruling class, to win the battle of democracy. The proletariat will use its political supremacy to wrest, by degrees, all capital from the bourgeoisie, to centralize all instruments of production in the hands of the state. And the proletariat organized as the ruling class, i.e., and the increase of production of productive forces as rapidly as possible. Of course, in the beginning, this cannot be effected except by means of despotic inroads on the rights of property and on the conditions of bourgeois production, by means of measures, therefore, which appear economically insufficient and untenable, but which in the course of the movement outstrip themselves, necessitate further inroads upon the old social order, and are unavoidable as a means of entirely revolutionizing the mode of production. These measures will, of course, be different in different countries. Nevertheless, in the most advanced countries, the following will be pretty generally acceptable. So these are the 10 planks, as they are known. Let's go over these 10 planks, shall we? Abolition of property in land and application of all rents of land to tax purposes. 2. A heavily progressive or graduated income tax. 3. Abolition of all right to inheritance. 4. Confiscation of the property of all immigrants and rebels. 5. Centralization of credit in the hands of the state by means of a national bank with state capital and an exclusive monopoly. 6. Centralization of the means of communication and transport in the hands of the state. 7. Extension of the factories and instruments of production owned by the state, and bringing into cultivation of wastelands and the improvement of the soil generally in accordance with a common plan. 8. Equal liability of all to labor. Establishment of industrial armies, especially for agriculture. 9. Combination of agriculture with manufacturing industries, gradual abolition of the distinction between town and country by a more equitable distribution of the population over the country. And number 10, free education for all children in public schools, abolition of children's factory labor in its present form, combination of education with industrial production, etc., etc. When, in the course of development, class distinctions have disappeared and all production has been concentrated in the hands of a vast association of the whole nation, the public power will lose its political character. Political power, properly so it is called, is merely the organized power of one class for oppressing another. If the proletariat during its contest with the bourgeoisie is compelled by the force of circumstances to organize itself as a class by means of a revolution, it makes itself the ruling class, and as such sweeps away by force the old conditions of production. Then it will, along these conditions, have swept away the conditions for the existence of class antagonisms and of classes generally, and will thereby have abolished its own supremacy as a class. In the place of old bourgeois society, with its classes and class antagonisms, we shall have an association in which the free development of each is the condition for the free development of all. And part 3. We're getting there, folks. 12 pages. Reactionary socialist and communist literature. Reactionary socialism. Owing to their historical position, it became the vocation of the aristocracies of France and England to write pamphlets against the modern bourgeois society. In the French Revolution of July 1830 and in the English Reform agitation, these aristocracies again succumbed to the hateful upstart. Thenceforth, a serious political contest was altogether out of the question. A literary battle alone remained possible, but even in the domain of literature, the old cries of the Restoration period had become impossible. In order to arouse sympathy, the aristocracy was obliged to lose sight, apparently, of their own interests and to formulate their indictment against the bourgeoisie in the interest of the exploited working class alone. Thus, the aristocracy took their revenge by singing lampoons of their new master and whispering in his ears sinister prophecies of coming catastrophe. In this way arose feudal socialism, half lamentation, half lampoon, half echo of the past, half menace of the future, and at times, by its bitter, witty, and incisive criticism, striking the bourgeoisie to the very heart's core. But always ludicrous in its effect through the total incapacity to comprehend the march of modern history. The aristocracy, in order to rally the people to them, waved the proletarian alms bag in front of a banner. But the people, so often as it joined them, saw on their hindquarters the old feudal coat of arms and deserted it with loud and irrelevant laughter. One section of the French legitimists and Young England exhibited this spectacle. In pointing out that their mode of exploitation was different to that of the bourgeoisie, the feudalists forgot that they exploited under circumstances and conditions that were quite different and that are now antiquated. In showing that, under their rule, the modern proletariat never existed, they forget that the modern bourgeoisie is the necessary offspring of their own form of society. For the rest, so little they do they conceal the reactionary character of their criticism that their chief accusation against the bourgeoisie amounts to this, that under the bourgeois regime, a class is being developed, which is destined to cut up root and branch the old order of society. What they upbraid the bourgeoisie with is not so much that it creates a proletariat as that it creates a revolutionary proletariat. In the political practice, therefore, they join in all coercive measures against the working class, and in ordinary life, despite their highfalutin phrases, they stoop to pick up the golden apples dropped from the tree of industry and to barter truth, love and honor for traffic in wool, beetroot sugar, and potato spirits. I'm talking about vodka, I imagine. As the person has ever gone hand in hand with the landlord, so is the clerical socialism with feudal socialism. Nothing is easier than to give Christian asceticism a socialist tinge. Has not Christianity declaimed against private property, against marriage, against the state? Has it not preached in the place of these clarity and poverty, celibacy and mortification of the flesh, monastic life and mother church? Christian socialism is but the holy water with which the priest consecrates the heart burnings of the aristocrat. B. The petty bourgeois socialism. The feudal aristocracy was not the only class that was ruined by the bourgeoisie. Not only the class whose conditions of existence pined and perished in the atmosphere of modern bourgeois society, the medieval burgesses and the small peasant proprietors. I'm going to skip down a little bit. In countries where modern civilization has become fully developed, a new class of petty bourgeois has been formed, fluctuating between proletariat and bourgeoisie in the ever renewing itself as a supplementary part of the bourgeois society. The individual members of this class, however, are being constantly hurled down into the proletariat by action of competition and as modern industry develops. They even see the moment approaching when they will completely disappear as an independent section of modern society. to be replaced in manufactures, agriculture, and commerce by overlookers, bailiffs, and shopmen. In countries like France, where the peasants constitute far more than half of the population, it was natural that writers who sided with the proletariat against the bourgeoisie should use, in their criticism of the bourgeois regime, the standard of the peasant and petty bourgeois, and from the standpoint of these intermediate classes should take up their cudgels for the working class. Though thus arose petty bourgeois socialism. Sismondi was the head of this school, not only in France, but also in England. What's going on, the other Karl? I appreciate that. Yeah, Karl Marx, the original irony, bro. Yeah, exactly. This school of socialism dissected with great acuteness the contradictions in the conditions of the modern production. It laid bare the critical apologies of economists. It proved incontrovertibly the disastrous effects of machinery and division of labor, the concentration of capital and land in a few hands, overproduction and crises. It pointed out the inevitable ruin of the petty bourgeois and peasant, the misery of the proletariat, the anarchy in production, the crying inequalities in the distribution of wealth, the industrial war of extermination between nations, the dissolution of old moral bonds, of the old family relations, of the old nationalities. In its positive aims, however, this form of socialism aspires either to restoring the old means of production and of exchange, and with them, the old property relations and the society, or to cramping the modern means of production and of exchange, within the framework of the old property relations that have been and were bound to be exploded by, I think they mean exploited by those means. In either case, it is both reactionary and utopian. Its last words are corporate guilds for manufacture, patriarchal relations, and agriculture. Ultimately, when stubborn historical facts had dispersed all intoxicating effects of self-deception, this form of socialism ended in a miserable fit of the blues. German or true socialism. The socialist and communist literature of France, a literature that originated under the pressure of a bourgeoisie in power, and that was the expression of the struggle against this power, was introduced into Germany at a time when the bourgeoisie in that country had just begun its contest with feudal absolutism. German philosophers, would-be philosophers, and beaux esprits eagerly seized on this literature, only forgetting that when these writings immigrated from France into Germany, French social conditions had not immigrated along with them. In contrast with German social conditions, this French literature lost all its immediate practical significance and assumed a purely literary aspect. Thus, to the German philosophers of the 18th century, the demands of the First French Revolution were nothing more than the demands of practical reason in general. The work of the German literati consisted solely in bringing the new French ideas into harmony with their ancient philosophical conscience, or rather in annexing the French ideas without deserting their own philosophical point of view. Yeah. Mortification. It reminds me of the Christian Aussie death band. Oh, okay, cool. This annexation took place in the same way in which a foreign language is appropriated, namely by translation. It is well known how the monks wrote silly lies of Catholic saints over the manuscripts on which the classical works of an ancient heathendom had been written. The German literati rewrote their philosophical nonsense beneath the French original. For instance, beneath the French criticism of the economic functions of money, they wrote alienation of humanity, and beneath the French criticism of the bourgeois state, they wrote dethronement of the category of the general, and so forth. The introduction of these philosophical phrases at the back of the French historical criticisms they dubbed philosophy of action, true socialism, German science of socialism, philosophical foundation of socialism, and so on. The French socialist and communist literature was thus completely emasculated, and since it ceased in the hands of the German to express the struggle of one class with one another, he felt conscious of having overcome French one-sidedness and of representing not true requirements, but the requirements of truth. Not the interests of the proletariat, but the interests of human nature, of man in general, who belongs to no class, has no reality, who exists only in the misty realm of philosophical fantasy. This German realm, which took its schoolboy task so seriously and solemnly, and extolled its poor stock and trade in such mountebank fashion, meanwhile gradually lost its pedantic innocence. The flight of the German, and especially of the Prussian bourgeoisie, against the feudal aristocracy and absolute monarchy. In other words, the liberal movement became more earnest. By this, the long-wished-for opportunity was offered to true socialism of confronting the political movement with socialist demands, of hurling the traditional anathemas against liberalism and against representative government, against bourgeois competition, bourgeois freedom of the press, bourgeois legislation, bourgeois liberty and equality, and of preaching to the masses that they had nothing to gain and everything to lose by this bourgeois movement. German socialism forgot, in the nick of time, that the French criticism whose silly echo it was presupposed the existence of modern bourgeois society with its corresponding economic conditions of existence and the political constitution adapted thereto. The very things whose attainment was the object of the pending struggle in Germany. To the absolute governments with their following of persons, professors, country squires, and officials, it served as a welcome scarecrow against the threatening bourgeoisie. It was a sweet finish after the bitter pills of flogging and bullets with which these same governments, just at that time, dosed the German working class risings. While this true socialism thus served the governments as a weapon for fighting the German bourgeoisie, it at the same time directly represented in reactionary interest the interests of the German Philistines. In Germany, the petty bourgeois class, a relic of the 16th century, and since then, constantly cropping up again under various forms, is the real social basis of the existing state of things. To preserve this class is to preserve the existing state of things in Germany. The industrial and political supremacy of the bourgeoisie threatens it with certain destruction. On the one hand, from the concentration of capital, on the other, from the rise of a revolutionary proletariat, true socialism appeared to kill these two birds with one stone. It spread like an epidemic. The robe of speculative cobwebs, embroidered with flowers of rhetoric, steeped in the dew of sickly sentiment. But yes.
I haven't even looked at his car yet.
Oh.
We took it at 8.
Oh wow.
So.
Go ahead and we'll be there.
I mean, I haven't even looked at it or done anything to it.
Wow. Mm-hmm.
So I guess they're over busy. He says it's fine.
Okay.
At 5, I'll go out and get some ice and one other thing, but you can make your thing whenever you want to.
Okay.
Do you need to have that thought at all, the check-in? Or?
No.
You're all right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I'm just updating you.
Yeah.
And so we'll go out and be a little cooler at 5 as well.
Okay.
Has no bearing at all or coincidence that my show will be over at 5.
Ah. Okay. Well, that's yeah.
And they probably close at 5, so they may know something. I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyway, if it runs in tomorrow, you'll have to go take him to pick up his car.
Okay.
Because I'll be over there.
Right.
Is that okay?
Yep. All right. Okay. We're almost done, folks. We're on page 42. We've got 6 pages left. We're going to get through it. Like I say, this is why I don't do a lot of the reading streams. Shout out to the other Carl, though. I know that he does a lot of these reading streams and all that. I appreciate that, going through this stuff. Like I say, we're going through a short book. This is 48 pages, folks. We're on page 42, and it's just, oof. Oh, man. Okay. So we're going to skip down to conservative or bourgeois socialism. A part of the bourgeoisie is desirous of redressing social grievances in order to secure the existence of bourgeois society. this section belongs to economists, philanthropists, humanitarians, improvers of the condition of the working class, organizers of charity, members of societies for the prevention of cruelty to animals, temperance fanatics, hole and corner reformers of every imaginable kind. This kind of socialism has moreover been worked out into complete systems. We may cite Proudhon's Philosophie de la Misère misère as an example of this form. The socialistic bourgeois want all the advantages of modern social conditions without the struggles and dangers necessary resulting therefrom. They desire the existing state of society minus its revolutionary and disintegrating elements. Yep. So this is very much okay. So this kind of represents what bread tubers and the folks who voted for Biden. This is what they want. So I'm going to repeat this just to make sure here. The socialistic bourgeois want all the advantages of modern social conditions without the struggles and dangers necessary resulting therefrom. They desire the existing state of society minus its revolutionary and disintegrating elements. So they want everything to change, but we just don't want that revolution and all that death and killing. We don't want all that. We just want reformism. This is arguably what conservative or bourgeois socialism is. It's reformism, in my opinion. But anywho. The bourgeoisie naturally conceives the world in which it is supreme to be the best. And bourgeois socialism develops this comfortable conception into various more or less complete systems, and requiring the proletariat to carry out such a system, and thereby to march straightway into the social New Jerusalem. It but requires, in reality, that the proletariat should remain within the bounds of existing society, but should cast away all its hateful ideas concerning the bourgeoisie. I've only read What is Property by Proudhon. Oh, okay. Yeah, I have not read Proudhon at all, to be honest with you, but yeah. A second and more practical but less systematic form of this, socialism, sought to depreciate every revolutionary movement in the eyes of the working class, but showing that no mere political reform, but only a change in the material conditions of existence in economic relations could be of any advantage to them. By changes in the material conditions of existence, this form of socialism, however, by no means understands abolition of the bourgeois relations of production, an abolition that can be effected only by a revolution, by administration reforms based on the continued existence of these relations. Reforms, therefore, that in no respect affect the relations between capital and labor, but at the best lessen the cost and simplify the administrative work of bourgeois government. Bourgeois socialism attains adequate expression when and only when it becomes a mere figure of speech. Free trade for the benefit of the working class, productive duties for the benefit of the working class, prison reform for the benefit of the working class. This is the last word and the only seriously meant word of bourgeois socialism. It is summed up in the phrase, the bourgeois is a bourgeois for the benefit of the working class. Very true. This is pretty much this bread tuberism right here. I'm going to go ahead and mark this with my pen right here. I'm just going to put one name just so I can remember it. And I'm not going to tell you what name it is, but I think y'all know who I'm talking about. But I'll go ahead and put this in the book here. Ooh, my handwriting is atrocious. All right. That's why I type things out. Okay. The third type, critical utopian socialism and communism, where, once again, utopianism is something that they did not promote. We do not here refer to that literature which, in every great modern revolution, has always been given voice by Booth and others. Okay, I'm skipping down here. I try to skip past the bullshit here. Okay, the first direct attempts of the proletariat to attain its own ends made in times of universal excitement when feudal society was being overthrown. These attempts necessarily failed, owing to the then underdeveloped state of the proletariat, as well as to the absence of the economic conditions for its emancipation. The socialist and communist systems were properly so called those Saint Simon Fourier, Owen, and others, sprang into existence in the early undeveloped period described of the struggle between proletariat and bourgeoisie. Like I say, I'm going to skip through some of these things here because I'm kind of lazy, and also, Okay, the significance of critical utopian socialism and communism bears an inverse relation to historical development. In proportion as the modern class struggle develops and takes definite shape, this fantastic standing apart from the contest, these fantastic attacks on it, lose all practical value and all theoretical justification. Therefore, although the originators of these systems were, in many respects, revolutionary, their disciples in every case formed mere reactionary sects. They hold fast by the original views of their masters in opposition to the progressive historical development of the proletariat. They therefore endeavor and consistently to deaden the class struggle and to reconcile the class antagonisms. They still dream of experimental realization of their social utopias of founding isolated phalansteles, of the establishing home colonies, of setting up a little Icaria, duodecimo editions of the New Jerusalem, and to realize all the castles in the air. They compelled to appeal to the feelings of the bourgeois. By degrees they sink into the category of the reactionary conservative socialists depicted above, differing from those only by more systematic pedantry and by their fanatical superstitious belief in the miraculous effect of their social science. They therefore violently oppose all political action on the part of the working class. Such action, according to them, can only result from blind unbelief in the new gospel. Thank you very much, Paspasuka. The Owenites in England and the Fourierists in France, respectively, opposed the Chartists and the Reformists. I can't, excuse me, je ne pas parler français, so excuse me. But yeah, basically the Reformists. And part 4, I'll actually read through this whole thing because there's not that much there. Section 2 has made clear the relations of the communists to the existing working class parties, such as the Chartists in England and the agrarian reformers in America. The communists fight for the attainment of the immediate aims for the enforcement of the monetary interests of the working class, but in the movement of the present. They also represent and take care of the future of that movement. In France, the communists allied themselves with the Social Democrats against the conservative and radical bourgeoisie, reserving, however, the right to take up a critical position in regard to the phrases and allusions traditionally handed down from the Great Revolution. In Switzerland, they support the radicals, without losing sight of the fact that this party consists of antagonistic elements, particularly of democratic socialists in the French sense, partly of radical bourgeois. In Poland, they support the parties and insist on an agrarian revolution as the prime condition for the national emancipation. That party which fomented the insurrection of Krakow in 1846. In Germany, they fight with the bourgeoisie, whether it acts in a revolutionary way against the absolute monarchy, the feudal squirearchy, and the petty bourgeoisie. But they never cease for a single instant to instill into the working class the clearest possible recognition of the hostile antagonism between bourgeoisie and proletariat, in order that the German workers may straightway use, as so many weapons against the bourgeoisie, the social and political conditions that the bourgeoisie must necessarily introduce along with its supremacy, and in order that, after the fall of the reactionary classes in Germany, the fight against the bourgeoisie itself may immediately begin. The communists turn their attention chiefly to Germany, because that country is on the eve of a bourgeois revolution that is bound to be carried out under more advanced condition of European civilization, and with a much more developed proletariat than that of England in the 17th and of France in the 18th century. Because the bourgeois revolution in Germany will be but prelude to an immediately following proletarian revolution. In short, the communists everywhere support every revolutionary movement against the existing social and political order of things. In all these movements, they bring to the front, as the leading question in each, the property question, no matter what its degree of development at the time. Finally, the labor everywhere for the union and agreement of the democratic parties of all countries. The communists disdain to conceal their views and aims. They openly declare war. They openly declare that their I just kind of filled that in my mind. They openly declare that their ends can only be attained by the forcible overthrow of all existing social conditions. Let the ruling classes tremble at a communistic revolution. The proletarians have nothing to lose but their chains. They have a world to win. Working men of all countries unite. There you go. And so this is the Bantam Classic. And like I say, there are many different, I have to be careful, and I always try to say this. Let me see if I can show myself on the camera here. I do this rarely, but I will do it this time just so you can get a clear idea. I have to change the brand as it said on StreamYard. So I'll do that, and I'll go ahead and show my face. Let's see here. Oh, I can't do that, can I? Can I turn? Oh, okay. I can turn on the camera. Okay, there we go. Let me see here. Can I do that? Okay. Green screen. No, that does nothing. Okay, sorry. I'm being a boomer here. Shoot. Shoot. Okay. Camera. Can I turn it? Let me see here. Okay. Well, it seems I can't change that right now. That's okay. What I was going to say then is, just to make sure, I should always clarify this. So this is the Bantam Classic version of the Communist Manifesto. I'm sure, like I say, every version is a little bit different here. So this edition has, let's see here. So this came out, Bantam Classic. So this is 1992. This is by Vladimir Posner. So I just want to make sure here this was reissued in September of 2004. And so, yeah, there you go. I think that, like I said, there's a lot of good stuff in there. And people obviously pick out the good stuff, such as at the end here. There is nothing to lose. The proletariat has nothing to lose but their chains. And, of course, working men of all countries unite. So I think overall it is a very good book. I'm glad I finally read it. There's a lot of good information in there. And it's something you have to read a few times and try to figure out what that means in the modern day, which I think can be difficult, but I think that there's a lot of good stuff going on there. But yeah, I think that's all I have to say. Let me see what we got here. If there's anything else that we should say. I don't think there is, though, offhand. I'm glad that I read it, though. Took me a while to read it, obviously, because I'm not the strongest reader, as you know. But yeah, that's 48 pages. Well, roughly 48 pages worth of stuff to read. Actually, less than that. It's more like, well, minus this, it's yeah, it's more like 30 pages. But yeah, it's okay. Yeah. God didn't give Israelites private property that was Baal worship. They turned to the Baals immediately and never fulfilled the covenant. The Bible doesn't acclaim private land and always frowns on those. Yep, exactly. Yeah, revisionist Zionism. That's all it is. It's revisionist Zionism. Let me see here. Let me go ahead and put this on Muterino here. Let me do that. Put that on mute. There we go. Put that on Muterino there. And let's go ahead and look at this video right quick. Yeah. Baleful ideologies. Exactly. Let me go ahead and share the screen then, and we'll watch this video here. Let me see here. Oh, sorry. Wrong thing. And we'll go ahead and share the screen. Yeah, more like working men of my country unite. Am I right? Yeah, exactly. But of course, they'll say that's reactionary as well, and that doesn't unite everybody, Okay, let's see what this last video is. Let's see if I'll be surprised. what it's going to be.
The California recall election is coming. Will you vote for
Oh, this okay. The Libertarian. Oh, yes.
Gavin Newsom? Caitlyn Jenner? That guy with a bear?
Oh, yeah. Vote bear. Yeah. I saw
Maybe
this,
just
yeah.
vote for the damn bear.
Yeah, vote for the damn bear.
Bear won't raise your taxes. Bear won't green poorly thought out high-speed rail project. Bear won't violate his own mandates and eat indoors at a fancy restaurant.
Yeah.
He's a bear. He's just gonna do bear things.
Yeah.
The only hole bear will dig itself is the one it sleeps in all winter long, helping conserve energy and limiting the need for rolling blackouts. Bear doesn't want to interfere in your life. Bear doesn't want to be near people at all. You mind your business, Bear will mind his. Doesn't that sound nice for a change?
Yeah.
Maybe wear a bell or something, just in case. Vote for Bear. I mean, he's already on the damn flag.
Ha ha ha. Rare funny moment by the Libertarians. Rare funny moment, yeah. If Libertarians, yeah, the Libertarians, I thought we could have a good laugh. Yeah, oh yeah, I know. California burning will be a gift to humanity. It will, unironically it would. Yeah, California is just going down. Who knows what shape it's going to take? I think that there will be a move to try to keep things going in California. You know, I think that, you know, in general, the powers that be, you know, bourgeoisie or whichever you want to say. Oh, sorry. Yep. Yeah, I saw it. You know what? I actually did see something else. I'll go ahead and put it on stream. Sorry. Whoops. Whoopers. I'll go ahead and. There we go. Oopsie. Oh man, my voice is shot. Sorry. Let's see. I'll go ahead and show this video here. There is something else here. This is international relations. I was going to put this video up on the channel, but why not? We'll go ahead and show. Okay, so this, let me give some background before we show this. So this is in Sierra Leone, and this is something like a safety meeting in front of these folks. Yeah, I'm thinking of the first Kami Boogaloo guy. Yeah, for the lols. Yeah, this is just kind of funny, but it's also sad in a lot of ways as well. So let's get into it. Why not, huh?
你给我拍拍，你拍拍，打电话。我给你没给你动手。
Get out. Hey, out. Get out.
你给我上面打电话。
Out of this place,
你往
man.
我们这来，
Out of this place. Out of this place.
你先动手啊！你他妈的再动手打死你！滚！
Watch this.
Leave him. Hey. Leave him. He's on record. Hey.
Damn, this guy.
He's on record. Leave him.
This guy going on.
He's on record.
Why is it trying to? It's like, well, he immediately grabs for the stick. Like, oh man.
He's on record. He's on record. He's on record. Don't worry. He's on record. He's on record. Don't worry. He's on record.
Okay. What is this? That's a good question. Basically what it is that they were going to have a safety meeting. This is in Sierra Leone. And they were going to have a safety meeting. And I guess the Chinese dude got upset. I'm not sure why. But the Chinese dude decides to be like, yeah, fuck this shit. You know, turn off that camera. Give me that, give me your phone. You know, I understood some things in Mandarin. But it's like, basically he's like, this dude's just going to give a safety meeting. And takes it out of his hand. Let's go back to the beginning here, and I'll show y'all. I cut some of it out, but yeah.
你给我拍拍，你拍拍，打电话。我给你好的，我也没给你动手。
Get out. Hey.
Yeah.
Out.
He spits on the ground, so he's like, I don't know why he's off, but yeah. humanity, violence is necessary. Yeah.
你给我上面打电话。
Out of this place,
你把我
man.
们人来，
Out of this place. Out of this place.
你先动手啊！你他妈的再动手，我打死你！快！
Man, slap.
Leave him.
Okay, you could tell that like this dude didn't want to fuck around, did he? He's just trying to give a safety meeting, and then this dude just smacks that out of his hand. I guess I don't know why he's upset, but it's like, yeah, 21st century is gonna be interesting. Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Hey. Leave him. He's on record. Hey. He's on record. Leave him. He's on record. He's on record.
It's like a bad kung fu. Well, it's like a worse kung fu movie. It's like, oh man.
He's on record. He's on record. Don't worry. He's on record.
So here comes this manager. I imagine this is like a manager or something like this. Some fairly higher up muckety muck. So let's see what happens with this.
He's on
Not
record.
much.
Don't worry. He's on record. Don't worry. He's on record for this. He's on record. He's on record. No. He has no right to stop him. We are on safety records. No, he has no right to stop him. The man is on safety. He has no right to stop him.
Why?
He has no right. No, he has to stop him. He was the one who left that place to come stop the safety meeting. He has no right. Don't worry. He has no right. He's on record for this. He has no right. And this one, we are going to take it up seriously. Don't worry.
Damn, that guy's got a high. He's got no right. He's got no right. It's like, Lord have mercy.
Don't worry. Don't worry. He has no right. The man is conducting a safety toolbox meeting. He went there and then disturbed the safety meeting. He has no right. Don't worry, calma. Don't worry. Everything is on record. Don't worry. Everything is on record. Everything is on record.
Yes.
Everything is on record. Just pick up your deeds. Pick up your deeds. Just pick up everything. Everything is on record. This very one, I'm going to call go now. Don't worry.
Jesus wept. Oh man, see, this is the whole thing. When these videos come out, like I say, I try to be very careful about what I say about China, this and that. But it's like, this is what happens, man. And you'll still see these folks that simp for China. People like Daniel Dumdrill, this and that. And they don't even realize, it's like Daniel Dumdrill, for example. You can say what you will, and maybe he has some points of, being correct, but it's like, bro, you're not Chinese. You're there because China is a better economy right now. You don't give a shit, though, about China itself. Yeah. He was saying nickel. Yeah, he was saying high on mercury. Okay. Nobody claimed on. Yeah. No, yeah, that's true. Yeah. Yeah, that's true. Like I say, I don't know. It's just, that's the way it goes, isn't it? It's all so tiring, isn't it? It's all so tiring. It really is. It's all so tiring. Hold on, let me find that picture. Yeah. It's also tiresome. There we go. Yeah, it's also tiresome. Yeah. Empire of Dust. It's a t-shirt. A vaporwave t-shirt. Oh, wow. Can you imagine being such a memer that you do that? Yep. There you go. There's the here it is. Yep. It's true though. Like I say, you got to be careful with what you say and how you say it. But yeah. Here's a slap in the face. Yeah, sure. Let's go ahead and see that. There we go. Let's go ahead and do that. Let's see what we got here. Oh man. Okay, let's see what we got here. There we go. Okay, yeah, let's go ahead and see. Let's go ahead and see this slap in the face. Why not? It really wasn't that much of a slap, really. It's just more of a. I mean, he could have gone really. He could have gone much more hardcore, in my opinion. But I barely saw anything. Huh, okay. Let me see if I can find a better one. Let me see what we got here. Let me see if I can find a better one. Not that one. MSNBC, are they going to get pissy with me? Hindustan Times, I don't think they're going to mess with me. All right. We'll play a little bit of this. That's barely a slap. That's why I'm not really that upset. It's like, that's barely a slap. I'm like, okay. He barely got touched. Yeah. It wasn't an Arab level smack. Yeah, well, that's true. You got a point there, yeah. Have you seen the movie with the Chinese businessman who had like 300 kids with African women and left them to return to China? Oh, word? I haven't heard that. There are so many crazy things that have gone on. You know, it's like they made a Chinese dude a chief in different countries, and oh yeah, it's crazy. Got an egg toss. Oh yeah, he got an egg tossed at him. Okay, let me see. Let me see what we got here. Oh, okay, here's it. Okay. Of course. It's going to take a minute to... Of course. Let me see. Yeah, stop Asian hate, yeah. You can't see the video? Oh, damn. Sorry about that. Shoot. What did I do? Oh, okay. Sorry about that, yeah. Sorry about that. Yeah. I'm sorry about that. Let me see here. I'm being too much of a boomer. Here we go. There we go. We already watched that. We already got that. Okay, here we go. Headshot! I hate that. Hold on. Let me go back. Headshot! He got hit. He got with him. Headshot! Got him. Okay, let's go ahead and see this again. We'll watch this slap again. That's the most feminine looking slap I've ever seen. That's the most feminine type of slap I've ever seen. I'm like, bro, what? Yeah, he was. I mean, still, it's not a good slap. I'm sorry. I mean, people were shitting their pants over it. I'm like, okay, I mean, whatever, I guess. Linda Clinique. I don't know. It's just like went with the fingers too. It's like no, go in with your whole hand, man. Go in with the whole hand and smack. Yeah, egg the banker. Yeah. Someone also threw a dildo at a politician. Oh man, that's crazy. Mon Dieu, huh? Mon Dieu. Yeah. Slap Macron, epic. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. The women got together and posed their babies. Oh, man. It's not surprising. Not surprising at all. Not surprising at least, yeah. Probably hurt him a lot. He's so weak. Yeah, exactly. That just was, yeah, it's just kind of pitiful, isn't it? All right. Oh, well, I hope y'all enjoyed that reading of the Communist Manifesto. The 48, well, less than 48 pages that I read. So hopefully y'all enjoyed that. See you later and goodbye. Let's go ahead and wrap this on up. Let's go ahead and see what I got here in terms of, yeah, let's go ahead and do Michael Parenti. Why not? I'll go ahead and unplug the Micarino and let's go ahead and do it. So see you later. Goodbye.
The bombings are working. They know what they're doing. Just because you don't know what they're doing doesn't mean they don't know what they're doing. Of course they know what they're doing. The bombings are achieving what they're supposed to, which is to destroy Yugoslavia, to turn it into a deindustrialized...
There we go.
Machen Sie sich fertig, Thälmann.
Sie wissen wohl, was nun kommt.
Ja. Ein besseres Deutschland. Ein Deutschland ohne euch.
Das Wertvollste, was der Mensch besitzt, ist das Leben. Es wird ihm nur ein einziges Mal gegeben. Und benutzen soll er es so, dass er sterbend sagen kann: Mein ganzes Leben, meine ganze Kraft habe ich dem Herrlichsten auf der Welt, dem Kampf für die Befreiung der Menschheit gewidmet.